This video is presented by the Globalist Agenda. When all you need is love just isn't enough, turn to the Globalist Agenda for that perfect final solution. The Globalist Agenda. We'll get it right. Someday.
This will not be my usual style of video, although I shouldn't have to because the knowledge I'm about to impart is so rudimentary. I'm about to get all 6th grade social studies educational. And the reason is quite simple. Thanks to the institutions of our modern Western education, certain basic facts of our human psychology and geopolitics, facts learned on playgrounds and formally in our classrooms, have been omitted from the curriculum, and it has become necessary to present such post-educational reviews. Presented herein are several blatant and obvious facts on how and why nationalism works and how globalism addresses the problems nationalism has been solving for millennia. I will be using the example countries A, B, and C, which represent no places in particular. I know how much students will want to nitpick specific examples, so I will not be giving them, so that attention may be given rather to the lesson as opposed to perpetual inconsequentials. First, a refresher on what nations are. Nations are divisions of human populations. These divisions represent bounded areas in which groups of a particular philosophical, political, or traditional leaning may live in relative peace while controlling the influx of competing and potentially contrary philosophies, political processes, and traditions, which might otherwise result in unwanted conflict. Nations, as a way of dealing with human conflict, stem from prehistoric and pre-human tribalistic tendencies shared by most mammals. At the microscopic level, there are groups of interrelated and allied tribes working together toward common goals where tribal affiliations often take a secondary importance to the overarching national affiliation. Now, class, with our basic understanding of what nations are, what they do, and where they come from, consider how you and your friends interact with each other. Do you have shared ideas, traditions, or activities? When you interact with people outside your friends group, are you protective of what you share exclusively with your friends? If you think about it, you have formed a small tribe. If you look deeper, considering yourself as a tribe of thoughts and your friendships a nation, you have a better understanding of how nations form and function. If Nation A is predominantly populated by a group that does not share the same religion as B and C, for example, they may all coexist because they are maintained independently of each other. A similar situation is possible if B and C share A's religion but stress different aspects of their shared faith. This applies equally in areas of law, economic practices, and culture. When conflicts do arise, the presence of nations presents several limitations and remedies that wouldn't otherwise be available. For example, if two nations become hostile toward each other, there are steps of diplomacy available before hostilities become inevitable. Exhausting these, there are other disinterested third parties in the form of other nations who might act diplomatically to prevent the military conflict. If all peaceful means should fail, these same third-party nations can help to arbitrate a return to peace. The same is true should one of the parties to the conflict be relatively unable to defend itself from an aggressive and powerful neighbor. In this case, one or more allies can intervene politically to balance the conflict and prevent military engagement. But I wouldn't want you to think that the only benefits of nationalism regard conflicts of an international flavor, because conflicts within a nation are also preventable by the same diplomatic means, and when a civil war does break out, its effects are generally limited to the geographic area occupied by that single nation and the border areas of its neighbors. But again, this is not just about conflict resolution, because nations also control resources which may be traded for goods not readily available in that area. Nations provide a way to facilitate such trade. Diplomacy between nations is not solely for the purpose of conflict resolution either. It can be used to strengthen understanding between different cultures and viewpoints by not only establishing a means for individuals to experience the differences and similarities through tourism, but also for nations to find peaceful ways to interact with each other on peaceful topics of benefit to everyone. How do nationalism's rivals, globalism and anarchy, fare on these subjects? Fortunately, we have real-world examples of both to extrapolate and answer. Globalism postulates that all regions, cultures, and philosophies can not only be governed by a single authority, but will be more peaceful and beneficial to all humanity. But these very differences are the reason regional administrative divisions must and will be maintained. History does give us plenty of examples. Only two forms of globalist society have been tried: the socialist, which relies on an altruistic instinct which does not reside in humans, and pseudo-socialist communism, which relies on an instinct all too common: greed for power. We may at once dispense with socialist globalism. It is a non-starter that crumbles at even the hint of self-interest or jealousy. That leaves us with communist globalism. Communism is a system of both government and economics. It requires the citizens to be socialist, and for them there are penalties for not taking this role seriously, while those in power enjoy a lifestyle that even the most wealthy capitalist might envy. It has built in some arguable solutions to problems nationalism answers. It removes from consideration diplomacy and military options. As there is only one government to consider, these are obsolete. As well, culture, officially, is a thing of the archaic past. There will be only one culture sanctioned and approved: the culture of the state. For these three will be replaced by increasing policing, especially of the secret variety, the rise in power and prestige of the professional interrogator, and a policy of forced resettlement designed to break cultural barriers. To be sure, conflicts will arise, as those who have and have not give to the prosperity of the state, in the name of socialism, to enrich the elite. As communities and families are broken up, shifted, and rearranged in the name of diversity, and societal enforcers, especially the secret ones, go about the business of preventative restraint of any potential disloyalty to the state and its professed ideals. When these conflicts arise, there will be no outsider to attempt to find a peace or even to limit the conflict. Surely no internal limitations will exist, nor any pesky borders. All conflicts will be global in nature. There will be no peace process other than adherence to the will of the state or the state's overthrow. Further, trade will all be in one direction, to the state, who will control, at the whim of the elite, its distribution or lack thereof. Tourism will be both illegal, with the exception of certain state-sanctioned events, and superfluous, as everything you will ever know about other cultures and philosophies will be dictated to you by the state or learned illegally from your new neighbors. The reason is simple: human labor is a resource, and yours is owned by the state. And lastly, the only peaceful interaction possible is the interaction that adheres in total to the philosophy of the state, and with no counterparts. The state need not address the problems of humanity, only those of the state, that is, the elite. In case you believe I have missed some other globalist political philosophy, I only need point out that all globalist-leaning philosophy, regardless of their original political bent, result in authoritarianism as bad as communism. The evidence is history. Now on to the other major competitor to nationalism: anarchy. There's not much I need to say here. It solves no problems and reduces all human progress back to the primitive tribalism of prehistory, only better armed. Nationalism is not a perfect system, but it is as perfect a system as we have managed to develop in our roughly 6,000-year history as civilized mammals.
Ground control to Major Tom. ground control to Major Tom.
You had your turn. Shut up.